Welcome to Soulful Living with me, Phillip Mountrose, and I have a wonderful special guest today. Dr. Fred Gallo is here. We're going to talk about uncovering the health within, which is a fascinating and very practical topic here for Soulful Living. And myself and my wife and partner, Jane, we host this show on Sundays here at Facebook, and we offer timely keys, practical solutions to creating a more joyful, meaningful life. And we've had 3 decades of experience, and my guest, Fred Gallo, had probably that 2 or more. He'll tell you more about that. We, Jane and myself, are published authors, trainers, founders of IAHP, International Association of Holistic Practitioners, and Awakenings Institute, our nonprofit organization for helping people's unique gifts come out into the world. And those gifts can be honored and nurtured and help other people. So we're offering this strategy, this tip today with Fred Gallo. And today I think you'll find it very useful. Share this show, rebroadcast it, pass it on. I think you'll find it very interesting with the strategies that we're going to offer. So I'm welcoming Fred Gallo in Pennsylvania. Dr. Fred, he's a psychologist, a therapist. He's really a groundbreaking person. He actually coined the terms energy psychology and energy psychotherapy, which is pretty impressive. That's something that we've been involved in, and many of the listeners have been involved in for a long time. He's written over 8 books, including Energy Psychology and the Neurophysics of Human Behavior. And hey, Fred, welcome to Soulful Living. Great to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Phil. How you doing?
Good. How's
Good
Pennsylvania?
It's a little cold today. Not extremely, but I mean, yeah. Last couple days, well, not yesterday, but a few days before, it was like in the 70s, close to 80. Today it was like 30 when I got up.
Wow, that's crazy.
About 35 out there right now, 40.
Wow.
Hey,
thanks for being on the Soulful Living Show. You really are kind of
thanks for inviting me.
Treasure house. Have a lot to offer, a lot to share. Being a pioneer in the field, we can relate to that. Breaking new ground, sometimes stubbing your toes or hitting your head in the process.
Yeah, a lot of times. A lot of arrows in the back too.
Right. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Fred, and how you got here into this time and space continuum at this moment in time and where you've come from. You don't have to go into your planetary history, just more your earthly background.
Just my earthly background.
Or more if you feel to share, however you want to explain it.
Well, let me see. What can I say? Is related to psychology or just related to life in general, or?
Well, kind of a little background so people kind of get to know you, how you became an expert in the field and a therapist and an author in this field itself. And since we're on Soulful Living, how it relates to living a more soulful life. And then we'll come into your topic today.
So when I was born in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and in 1946. And my parents, they lived through the Depression and World War II, and actually I had an uncle who died in World War II in the Army. So that was something that was always there in the milieu in our family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the oldest of 5 children. We were the first on our block to have a television. It was a black and white little kind of thing, I remember that. I might be older than you, or I don't know.
Maybe a little, yeah.
A little bit older than. But anyway, I was always very inquisitive as a kid, and I would ask the question why a lot. Always why.
Mm-hmm.
We would say something like, "You're going to eventually be I don't know if they said a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a philosopher or something along those lines." And I got interested in things like when I was a kid, I was interested in hypnosis, and I started reading a little bit about it, but I hypnotized my brother and very deep somnambulistic trance, it was amazing. And it was very shamanic because I was using bongos. But anyway, I mean, that's, so I got interested in psychology and philosophy. in school. I majored in philosophy. I went to graduate school in philosophy, but also got a minor, and then later a major in psychology. Then I went on to clinical psychology. First, I taught school for a bit, taught at 8th grade, and I did some. I helped them do some acting because and I discovered the power of children acting, because I remember this one girl, Barbara, and her father had died the beginning of the school year, just before the school year started.
Right.
I directed the play Our Town by Thornton Wilder, if you remember that play at all. But she played this part, Mrs. I think it was Mrs. Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
She had to be very outgoing, and it took her out of her shell. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That really made a difference. She was able to step out of that kind of withdrawn state that she was in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at all kinds of things. I got interested in George A. Kelly's work and personal constructs, and and Carl Rogers' work, and so on. And I got interested more in hypnosis. I studied Erickson's approach and neurolinguistic programming. I think you studied neurolinguistic programming.
Yes,
also.
I did. Right.
Yeah. So I studied with Bandler and Grinder, and I started teaching NLP some in my area. And but I never felt, people would say to me, why don't you write a book about it? And I thought, too many people are writing books about it. Well, what do I have to offer? So I couldn't see doing it. It just seemed to be sort of, egotistical kind of thing to do that. There was nothing really but I went on to my work as a psychologist, and I developed a private practice. I worked for different agencies at first, and eventually, here's the thing, 1992, I'm working in my private practice. I'm working on my doctorate at the same time, by the way. And I'm getting a bit bored with some of the stuff I'm doing.
Right.
Especially when it came to trauma, because sometimes I could help people resolve a trauma, but other times it just didn't seem to work. And I couldn't see making people really focus on a trauma if it was hurting them, and
Mm-hmm.
but I would try NLP techniques or all kind of exposure things and so on. And I remember this one lady I was working with, Barbara, and she had been raped when she was 13. And I would try to help her. She had become alcoholic, drug addict. You could say she was bipolar, major depressions. And I was helping her get by, but we weren't really resolving the trauma. And we had a little break in therapy. And then an interesting thing happened. And I think it was a synchronicity, because I really felt that something else has to emerge here. And so I read this article from a guy, and it happened to be Roger Callahan. And the article, he talked about treating addiction. And he had this very odd, to make a long story short, he said basically to treat addiction, you have the person tap under their eyes and under their arms. And that seemed to be the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, that probably pretty
that.
far out before
And so I just laughed and I put the article away. And then it was like, I don't know, a couple of weeks later or so, some woman came in to see me who had an addiction to pain medications. And I was doing some cognitive work with her. I did a technique called rational motive imagery. It was developed by Maxie Maltzby. And the cool thing was I would have her think about it, and then we would do this procedure, and her urge level would go way down to 0. But then when I would ask her to bring it back, she could bring it back. And I didn't think that wasn't very strange. I mean, of course, we thought about it. Why wouldn't she be able to bring it back? So we did that a couple of times. And then all of a sudden, I remembered this crazy psychologist who had written about tapping. And I said, and this really didn't create the expectation of this working. But I said, there's this crazy thing I read about recently. I said, it's so absurd. I said, but would you be willing to try it? I said, I've messed around with it myself. And so I don't know. And it involves tapping. And she said, yeah, she would do it. So I had her think about the urge, and you could see she had this real, you could say the term we used to use then is she was geeking, okay, really wanting the drug as she thought about it. So I had her tap.
Uncomfortable.
I had her tap under her eyes, and I had her tap. I just had her going back and forth. This is all I knew. Okay, under her eyes,
Right.
under her eyes. And the urge came way down to zero, basically. And then I said, well, see if you can get it back. And the interesting thing was she could get it back, but she could only get it back up to a 4. Okay.
So the intensity.
She was always able to get
gone
it back
down,
up to
way
a 10.
down.
Now it was a 4.
Yeah, that's.
I said, well, let's do some more of that. So we did some more, but every time she could get it back up, but only up to a 4. So then I figured I needed to learn some more about this. So I reached out to Callahan. He and I developed a relationship. And I was starting to learn this stuff. Well, anyway, the woman that I mentioned earlier, Barbara,
Right.
she comes in to see me back to see me after this break in therapy. And I knew as she walked in that we were going to cure her trauma. There was no doubt in my mind because I had also used it before she got there. I'd used it on myself, and I had several traumas from my life that when I treated them, it was amazing. Didn't bother me anymore. And I would think, well, maybe I tricked myself or I distracted myself, but it never came back to bother me again. Anyway, Barbara comes in, we start talking. She was upset about something about her mother. We did some tapping and she felt better. Because I had told her at first, I said, I've been doing something differently lately. Would you mind trying something? And I did that and took her through this. And she said, one minute she's really upset with her mother. Next moment she says, oh, I don't know why that bothered me. That's just the way my mother is. She means well. I mean, there was a real shift in her
Right.
out of this distress and into a whole different state of being, just like really, I guess, coming from her soul as compared to from her ego before.
Yeah,
right?
she really integrated.
And you've experienced it again and again, I'm sure.
So just for the viewers to get a context to.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me now?
I see your lips moving, but I don't hear any.
Okay, let's see what happened.
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. You can't hear me. Okay. Let me try something else, maybe. Can you hear me now?
No, very, very weak sound.
Let me see.
No. Can't hear you.
Let me check here. You can't hear me? Yeah, well, I don't know.
I hear a very, very distant.
Yeah, can you turn up your volume
Kind of
because
comes in and out.
It's coming. I think it's on your end and the internet because it's coming on really strong on the test here.
No, I can't hear you, Phil. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
You can hear me clearly. Huh.
Right. Yeah. Check your audio setting. Can you see where the audio is there? Can you change the audio setting?
And you're live. We're live right now, right?
Right. Yeah. But if you can't hear me, it's going to be hard.
We better start doing some tapping.
Yeah. You can't hear me though.
You want me to just talk?
I
can't hear you.
Well, I'll just say, Fred gave a context, his story there of thought field therapy from Roger Callahan.
A little bit comes in. I hear you for a second, and then it goes out again.
Okay.
Just like it goes, what?
Yeah.
Up.
So that was the beginning of what turned into
it can't be at my end, right?
EFT, the emotional freedom techniques. So
I don't know if it could be at my end.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Okay.
Click your audio setting.
Yeah, let me
My audio?
talk for a while here.
My audio setting.
So just for the audience, as Fred's trying to kind of get some audio
Enhanced
technical things going there.
What is that? Making
The thought field therapy was the prelude, the beginning of
Okay.
what turned into EFT when Gary Craig studied with Roger Callahan. That Fred Gallo was just talking about that story at the beginnings of the energy psychology, which he also is a pioneer of in the books he wrote and explored as well in the early years, the early 1990s of the energy psychology, energy healing movements and healing history, which he's a part of. So that came into Gary Craig as a student of Roger Callahan, modified it in some senses, simplified it, the thought field therapy, the tapping the points, which people may know. I'm tapping along here. And then we, Jane and I, years later, added Holistic EFT. We did some further tapping for kind of a body, mind, heart integration. And other people, of course, have innovated in the field of energy healing and tapping and many other energy modalities as well. So Fred, if he does get his audio back in track, he could talk about his topic today. Healing the uncovering the health within. So I'm going to turn it over to Fred for a moment. So Fred Gallo, if you can talk a little bit. Fred, you want to talk? Go ahead, Fred.
Phil, I don't know how to fix it.
Okay.
You sent me a message here, I see. Let me talk about uncover the health within. Go ahead, Fred. Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to just talk. It's too bad we wasn't able to fix this. But let me finish up a little bit about Barbara and then go into what we're talking about here. Usually whenever I, just giving more information about my discovery here of Callahan's technique, anytime I had ever talked to Barbara about her trauma, she would become very upset and even dissociate. And by using tapping, it took about 7-8 minutes and it resolved the trauma, never bothered her again. And so that really, really impressed me even more. Okay, so I wanted to find out more about this. But here's where and I think this brought more of the health out inside of her. She was always like, the health wasn't available because she was so caught up in the emotional distress. Okay, so anytime we can resolve the emotional distress, I think we get the person, we're kind of like, you could say with tapping and certain other techniques, it's a bottom-up approach. So instead of going cognitive, where a lot of times you would try to treat it from a cognitive point of view, we're going right to the emotional source, dealing with, neurologically, we're dealing with the amygdala, we're dealing with the vagus nerve, the dorsal branch of the vagus nerve. There's all that kind of factors involved, which frees the person up to be more in touch with their wisdom, their soul, their inner power. But here's one thing I want to say about the power within. I use a term I call the Michelangelo principle. And the idea is with Michelangelo, he believed that the figure was embedded in the stone. and that all he was doing is trying to help free that figure. And I think the same thing applies in psychotherapy or coaching or any kind of consulting. Somebody comes to you, they have a problem, whatever, and you're trying to help them. And a lot of what's involved is helping them get in touch with their inner resource. And how do you do that? Now, why I say the Michelangelo principle? If you're focusing on the health within the person and you keep your eye on that, one of the cool things about that for you as a communicator, whether you're a coach, a trainer of some sort, a therapist, a psychotherapist, whatever, physician, if you keep your eye on the health within, it's very inspiring for you personally. And your energy is very balanced when you're doing that, okay? If you focus on the pathology, that throws you off. And it also, in turn, throws off the client that you're working with, okay? I see it as like related to, just as an aside, this guy Huygens in Switzerland, way back, he made pendulum clocks. And one day he realized he had all these pendulum clocks in his workshop, and he noticed that they were all synchronized. And it just occurred to him that why would they all be synchronized? Because I made them at different times and they're all just going at the same rate. So what he did is he stopped all of them and started them up all desynchronized. They're all just going at different rates. And within a short period of time, and I don't know what that short period of time was because I wasn't there to talk to him, but they synchronized again. And he thought, isn't that something? They're relating to each other. How are they doing that? Now, he didn't know the answer, but later, from what I understand, physicists figured out that what happens is the clock with the strongest spring rules. So if there was a clock that had the really strong, bigger spring, it would send out a vibration, well, in this case, on the beams or whatever, and the other clocks would synchronize to it, okay? Well, that makes sense in terms of therapy too, right? Because if I'm with a client and they're very desynchronized, they're very distressed, they're in a, we'll call a pathologic state, and I focus on that spring is going to roll. It's going to throw me off, and it doesn't do anything to help them. But if I keep my eye on the soul, and I keep my eye on that, I keep thinking there's that health within, that soul within, and I just pay attention to it. And the more I pay attention, it's like a kind of mindfulness, because if I get caught up in the pathology for a moment, I go right back to the soul.
Right.
So that keeps me healthy. And as a result of me being healthy in that moment, that starts to bring out the health in them too. Just that process in and of itself, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had an experience where that really clarifies, I think. This girl, Michelle, had come to see me, who a good friend of hers had died, about a year prior to her coming to see me. And they were really close friends. And just one day, the girl, her mother went up to wake her up and she was deceased. She had had heart failure of some sort. Well, Michelle came to see me and said she thought she would be feeling better by now. That at least, maybe not totally, but she says, I feel I get worse and worse and worse. And she said, I'm depressed all the time. So right away, I think, hey, I know what we can do. We're going to tap on that experience whenever she found out that her friend died. So I right away have her tapping on it, and it didn't do anything. Okay. So I thought, wow, that didn't help at all. I mean, we tapped and didn't help at all. And I'm even thinking, well, there's reversals, and I tried to do something, and nothing helped. But then I got curious, and I thought, well, let me listen. And so I just, I had a good connection with her, and I felt a real nice feeling about her. So I think we were in this rapport, and I said, Michelle, I mean, it's, a sad thing that what happened with your friend, but you said something about you're depressed all the time. And she says, yeah, I'm depressed all the time. She says, I just, it gets worse and worse. She says, and I cry and all this. And I'm just listening and asking questions. Tell me. And so then it occurs to me, I thought, as I'm really being there with her and looking for this health within and being in touch with that, I said, well, is there ever a time you're not depressed? And she goes, well, maybe when I'm at work. I said, well, what is it about when you're at work? And she said, well, I'm just so busy that I'm so busy because I work in a nursing home and I'm working with all these people. And she says, I don't think she realized she said this. She says, I don't have time to think about it. And I hear that. I hear, so you don't have time to think about it. She goes, yeah, I'm just so busy. I said, well, when do you feel your worst? So then it occurs to me to ask that. And she says, well, when I'm at home alone maybe after dinner and I'm alone and I just sit there and I think about her and I just feel so bad and it just feels worse. And I said, okay. I said, okay, look, I have something that'll help you. And I know it'll help you because I know you already know how to do it. She says, what is it? I said, well, I have to ask you, first of all, before I tell you what it is, I need you to promise me that you'll do what I tell you to do. She said, well, I want to ask you to do something. I know you can do it, but I just need you to promise me you'll do it first. She said, well, what is it? I said, well, wait a second, it isn't anything embarrassing. I'm not going to have you do anything that would be, I'm not going to ask you to go run down the street naked or anything or some weird kind of thing, okay? But I promise you, if you do it, I know it'll help you. I have no doubt. She said, okay, what is it? I said, okay, now here's what it is. Oh, and then I said, wait a second, though. I said, would it be okay with you if you felt better? She said, well, yeah. What do you mean? I said, well, your friend died. I wonder if, would it feel disrespectful or unloving if you didn't suffer? I mean, I think I could understand somebody feeling that way. She goes, no. She goes, she wouldn't want me to feel this way because I know I wouldn't want her to feel this way if I was the one that died. I said, okay, I was just wondering about that because I think sometimes people can kind of get stuck in something like that. And she said, no. I said, okay, here's the thing. During the night, whenever those times when you would feel really down and depressed, I'd like you to do the same kind of thing you do when you're at work. You don't take time to think about it. I said, now here's the thing. I think at first it'll be a little difficult to do that, but I think you'll get better at it as you do that. And then you're in for a big surprise. And I'm not going to tell you what that is, but you'll know what it is because you'll discover that. And she goes, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. Now, let me just say, first of all that came out of was listening, our connection, our listening, and then an inspiration occurred to me out of that, me listening and asking questions, okay? It occurred to me that a couple of things occurred, that she couldn't be depressed all the time. Even though she thought she was, her consciousness was she was depressed all the time. It occurred to me that couldn't be the case, and there had to be somewhere, and she had an ability there, a resource there, and all I had to do was point the way. So she comes in to see me the next week. She says, I got to tell you. She says, I haven't felt this good in so long. I can't believe it. She said, and it's so simple. I don't know why I didn't realize this myself. I said, well, actually, Michelle, you really did realize it yourself. I mean, you knew it all along. I just pointed it out to you, and you knew it. Okay. Now, that's important too, because I wasn't taking the credit. And I shouldn't take, really. I mean, I was participating, but I really, it's very seductive to take the credit. Okay. And then when you do that, I think you dethrone the person in a way,
Mm-hmm.
Because you believe that it's there, and as long as you believe, it's like Henry Ford used to say, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Okay, so
Right.
if you really believe it and you look for it, you'll find it there. And that's about, so you're in a healthy state yourself because you're looking at the soul within. And then you listen, you ask questions, you listen, and you ask questions, you listen. And then at some point, a little angel comes flying by and goes, boop, boop, and an inspiration occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a
Right.
sudden, it's there. It's like, oh God, it was so simple. It's like, it's just, and that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is just so simple, and it doesn't, it isn't a lot of work. And here, one of the problems is, as much as I love tapping, and I find tapping to be very, very powerful. So do you. If we get too caught up in it, we
Right.
make that the power. And that can take away the true power.
Right. Good
So
point.
we use our techniques if they occur in context. If it seems to be the right thing, at first think with Michelle. I go in, oh, I know what it is. I'm going to do. I didn't take the time to listen. I'm going to go ahead and bam, we're going to wipe this right out here right now. I'm caught up with my ego. I want to help, but I'm really, oh yeah, this is no. And thank God it didn't work. Because it not working made me stop and listen and really pay attention and be curious, and almost like it's like you're being Columbo in a way. You got, well, it's this. Well, you're always depressed. Is it ever? You're not. Oh, and it worked. You just kind of like follow the chain by listening, and then at some point you do something. You either offer them what you're observing, or you say, hey, there's this kind of thing called tapping, and maybe that seems to fit at that time, or this visualization kind of thing, or Erickson sending the guy out to do some weird thing or whatever.
Yeah, the power is within. It's not in the technique. The technique helps you get to the power within. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Fred. So in closing, Fred, you want to share anything?
Wish I could hear you.
Mm-hmm.
We were having such a nice conversation at first. I wonder if it must be something on my end, huh?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
anyways, Fred, this has been
It's never
Fred.
happened here with my,
Yeah, Fred Gallo.
Any closing thoughts about uncovering the health within, Fred, including if you wish to add your contact information? Oh yeah, my contact information, I have a website,
Mm-hmm.
www.energypsych.com. My email address, I have different email addresses, but one is fgallo@energypsych.com. ENERGYPSYCH. I was doing a lot of traveling and training, and then COVID came along,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did some on the internet. Maybe I'll do some again. I've done some like Zoom trainings. I'm very busy in my office. Clients come in to see me. I have a couple of other psychologists who work for me or work with me, in the office, and so we're doing a lot of that. I'm working on another book right now. I hadn't written a book in a while, and a company reached out to me and asked me if I would write a book again. So I just putting something together, and part of it would be like a little bit of what we're talking about here. There's several books that I want to write. One's on integrating mindfulness and energy psychology. I call it mindful energy psychology. A book on treating chronic pain. I do a lot of work with chronic pain with people, and I find tapping is often very useful, but also again listening and understanding the power within the person and helping to draw that out, and that being kind of like fundamental, which I'm sure you do that too. I think anytime a therapist is really helping a person, I think they're doing that.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks, Fred. It's really been great being here with you. Yeah. And the Soulful Living Show. I'm sorry we had some technical difficulties, but Fred was able to share a lot of wisdom and soulful tips with you on uncovering the health within. And remember, we come to you every week here. Our website is gettingthrough.org/holistic, and we value your support. And tuition for our courses and other purchases support our mission to create a more loving world. And if you can share this message of love with those around you, together we can change the world. Have a wonderful week, and thank you, Dr. Fred Gallo. Until next time. Thanks, Fred.